You're listening to a Rock Candy podcast.
Hi, my name is Stephen Long, and I host a show here on Rock Candy called Sacred Tension. It's about the spiritual discipline of asking questions. If you find yourself uncomfortable in your faith, or if you find yourself caught between modern science and ancient religion, or if you're curious about the journeys of others who are sorting out faith and doubt, Sacred Tension is a place where nothing is off limits. You will find conversations with pastors, cult experts, spiritual leaders, and skeptics, all discussing the ways we navigate the faiths we were given. Find Sacred Tension right here on Rock Candy and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome to the Eleventylife podcast.
What's up, unicorns? Welcome to a very special episode of Eleventylife. I hope that whatever song you have been writing in your heart this past week, you have learned to sing loudly by today. We have had a really fun last couple of weeks at the Rock Candy Recording Studios in Asheville, North Carolina. Most of you that listen to the podcast also follow me and my band, 11-7. What some of you may not know is that over the last year and a half, I, along with my friend Scott Kerr, who plays in a band called Five Iron Frenzy, started a new side project band called Fantasy League. And this past November, we put out our very first full-length album. This was one of the most rewarding albums that I've ever worked on with friends. I am so incredibly proud of the work that Scott and I did together, and we decided to get together with our friends John and Andrew to talk about the creativity behind the album, the recording process, the rewriting process, digging really deeply into the lyrics and what was going through our heads in trying to craft a narrative for this album. We're going to dig into the instrumentation that we used, some of the techniques that we used for getting the different vocal sounds and textures that we came up with, and also just to sort of reminisce about the creative process, because I know that there are a ton of songwriters, artists, producers, and other folks that listen to this podcast, and a lot of times the work that we do is very solitary. It is done in isolation. It's a whole lot of opportunities to become incredibly neurotic and to suck the joy out of actually creating something by getting sort of bogged down with all of the minutia that goes along with creating an album. I hope that this conversation is fun, encouraging, and helpful for those of you who are ready to take the plunge into it. As I mentioned, we are doing this podcast in conjunction with our friends John and Andrew, who also have another podcast right here on the Rock Candy Network, and it is called Magnified Pod. These guys do such an incredible and thorough job of digging into the albums and the artists that mean an awful lot to them. And I consider Scott and I to both be incredibly fortunate to be on the receiving end of their covetously well-crafted musical critique. Check the show notes if you really like this episode and you want to check out their podcast. I highly encourage you to do so. Before we get started, huge hugs and high fives to none other than NBC and the NFL for using our song Wild in their Bengals versus Ravens game that happened last night. Very, very kind of you guys to sync some of our tunes for the game last night. I had zero idea any of that was happening, and a couple of friends of mine that were watching the game sent me a clip of it. So big love to you guys for that. Thank you so much. Big high fives and unicorn magic and pixie dust all over everyone who is still streaming 11-7 and Fantasy League on your favorite streaming services. Thank you for adding us to your playlist. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your life. It does not go unnoticed, and we are grateful for your ears. This is a longer episode, and it is split into two parts, so you might want to buckle up for it. And don't forget to save some snacks for the last half of the episode that will come out next week. I am so glad and grateful that you're all here. Thank you for spending some time with us on the podcast today. Without further ado, let's take a deep dive into Fantasy League. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Eleventylife. For those of you who are new to the show, my name is Matt Langston, play in this band, 11-7 and make really fun unicorn-tinged pop music. Over the last few years, I've been doing a side project with a friend of mine, Scott Kerr of the band Five Iron Frenzy, and today we are in studio together, a rare occurrence as most of us are cave dwellers and have to do all of that on our own, but I am super pumped to be in Denver, Colorado right now, talking about this last project that we did called Fantasy League. It's probably the best band to come out of the universe in the last few weeks.
Or the last 30 years or so.
The last 30 years to come out of the quantum realm. And so we spent the last, year and a half, 2 years working on this album, and I wanted to do a little bit of a breakdown on the creative process behind these songs, and so that we are not masturbatorially just talking about the art that we do together in the studio as two dudes do, we've invited two of our greatest friends and musical allies in the game from Magnified Pod to be a part of the show with us, John and Andrew. So pumped that we're all on the same screen together, hanging out again.
I wish we could be in the studio with you guys masturbating.
This is how you wanted to kick off.
Oh yeah.
Push
Who
for the
wouldn't
album,
love
right?
that?
You can't tee me up like that, Matt.
Yeah. If you wanted the MagPod treatment and you use the word masturbatory, you're just asking for it.
Yes.
Is it too early? Is it too early in the morning for a masturbation joke? I mean, I can easily, without question, say that this is the only episode of the pod that I've been on where I'm actually drinking coffee.
Right.
So what are you normally drinking on the show?
Alcohol.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
Beer, whiskey, something of that sort. But yeah,
have some candy as well.
Candy, some other.
None of that. We're morning risers today.
That's right.
You at least have some Baileys in the coffee or anything like that.
You should.
I mean, can you guys hold on a second? Let me go.
Yeah,
I need to go
real
get some.
Quick. It'll help. No, we're sad we can't be with you guys in person there, but we're very pumped to talk to you always, but especially about this record, which no secret that we are big fans of this project and this album. So we're really excited to dive in, go track by track through this thing with you guys. Thanks for asking us to do it. Yeah. So we've talked about this some with each of you when we've had you on the show, but can you just talk a little bit about the evolution of the project? Like, how did you decide specifically to work on this group and its sound? Was it just a general evolution of you two wanting to work together more? Did you have a particular goal about like achieving a certain sound or genre together?
Ever since we did the Fast Feeling record, I know I always wanted to do future projects with Matt. Really, it just was... It took a few years of pestering him to get around to it.
Is that real? Did that really happen that way? It was pestering on your end?
A little bit.
Okay.
Maybe not. I felt like maybe I was pestering. It was...
It was a mutual desire, right? That's what it seemed like.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think at any given time throughout the year, depending on what my workload is or what other projects I have going on, I could definitely give the impression maybe that I'm being pestered, but I definitely don't want you to walk away from the project like thinking that, I pestered Matt into being here. I was not coerced in any way. I gave full consent.
Matt, blink 3 times if you're being held against your will.
Help me!
I mean, I feel like when we had Leonore on, that she guys talked about, if I'm remembering correctly, that there's a little bit of a bromance between you guys, and that that this was sort of a natural evolution and like an obvious evolution of like you guys would of course work.
That's what Leonore said on your show.
Yeah, she said that you guys gelled really well together, and so I feel like that makes sense that you guys would end up working together on something else.
We gelled in the same way that like if we both worked at the same factory, we'd probably carpool. Talk about it on the way there.
The synth pop factory.
We go to the synth pop factory every day.
The Moog factory.
Yeah.
At the company holiday party, we'd end up around the
exchanging knowing glances from across the room.
Did you have in mind, like, I want to work together again and let's sort of achieve this kind of sound? Or was it just that's what came out when you guys started working together again?
That took a little bit to iron out. I don't think that there was a clear vision, for me at least, at the beginning. It was, I made several partial demos after the Fast Feeling album. Yeah, with kind of different. I mean, all sort of based in electronic land, but still not really sure what I wanted it to sound like. Yeah, at some point, I mean, I'd bounced a few demos off of you, I guess, through the years, and I think once Blind was the one I sent over, I think that one garnered enough enthusiasm to kind of like kickstart some momentum.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, most of the stuff that I feel like Scott sends me always has this really cool, like indie, like quirky indie pop sort of vibe to it. He's also super experimental, so all of his demos sound like Scott wrote them, but the musicality of it might change. The timbres and stuff might change depending on what new piece of gear he has in the studio at the time, which I think is awesome, because I love sort of when you find a new piece of gear and it gets you thinking about songs differently, or it moves you emotionally in a different way. And I feel like Scott is pretty tuned in with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Matt, that like when it comes to the bleeps and bloops, like were you expecting bringing in like a certain sort of production synthy sound that fit well for this project? Like, did you have things in mind that you really wanted to do with some of the new pieces you've gotten or whatever, and this is the place where you got to do it? Or like, was it more of a natural evolution of hearing Scott songs and being like, oh, I could use, this sound for this kind of song? Like, what was that process like?
I think I have a brand of, unicorn dust that I'm going to put on everything. I have a way that I want to hear stuff. And so it kind of goes that way. I think maybe the best way to describe it is like when I hear a song in my head, it feels like it occupies a space. It's like a room, or it's a hallway, or it's like a landscape. And I like to move the furniture around to make the room look like the way that I want it to, for me to feel comfortable in the room. And so I like going in and putting, a different coat of paint or a little splash of IKEA here and there. Sure. Unicorn IKEA. Yeah. And I feel like Scott makes really great rooms to play in. And that was what... Is that too weird of a metaphor?
I like it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's
a ball pit.
The ball pit that you set up and then you dive in and play in it. Yeah. I mean, we've said this before, but I feel like it really brings together the best of both of your considerable songwriting and production talents. Like it's clear that, it's the same guys who are parts of other projects that we like, but I like that it feels different in that it's this big, hooky, beautiful pop song arena with this great synthy sound bringing them to life. Like it's reminiscent of 80s pop songs in a way that's like really comforting to me, but it also sounds really modern. And it's all pretty like radio friendly, bite-sized pop songs in terms of being like 3.5 minutes. So it's like, I don't know, it feels pop forward in a way for both of you, but I can hear your work from previous projects in it too. So I don't know. I really like the way that it combined different things that I love about both of you guys' work. I don't know. How do you describe the sound of Fantasy League or the vibe that you were striving for? Were there particular influences for you on this? Were you excited about directions the songs were taking, or again, did it all just kind of come about naturally as you were working on it together? Yeah,
we did have a Touchstone. Crap, I can't remember the name of the band now. I'm totally drawing a blank. But it ended up sounding nothing like that.
Oh, okay. You know, like Starfucker?
Well, that was one of them.
That was one of mine for sure.
No, there.
Foals?
This will have to be an edit, probably.
I don't remember who the Touchstone band was.
You heard of Duran?
I hear a variety. In my mind, like, for good or for bad, I feel like our brains are always trying to fill in the gaps and make comparisons and make sense of things and be like, and I don't always like to do that. I don't always like to say like, oh, this sounds like X, Y, or Z, but like our brains are always trying to do that. And I do hear moments where I'm like, oh, this is giving me this kind of vibe, or this is giving me that kind of vibe. And that's, have you found what you're looking for, Scott?
No, I'm sorry. Okay. I swear, once we hit the record button, my already shitty memory,
he wasn't
gets
even looking
even
on
worse.
Spotify. He opened up Google and typed in "what is Fantasy League."
I just ask because I feel like I could see it either way, that it's just like, well, this makes sense that this is the sound that you two would put together as a duo, but also I feel like there are, it leans in a sort of direction that maybe I haven't heard from either of you come together here. So I just wondered if there was like a particular sound or style you were aiming for.
It definitely turned out way more 80s sounding than I intended anyway. Like even taking the production aspects that we leaned into, that I guess pushed it even farther in that direction. Even just like a lot of the melodic sense, it was not an intentional thing, but it just, the melodies were kind of coming out that way.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's not like I listened to any more 80s music than I normally do. So just kind of a couple of songs went that direction, and then once the blueprint was kind of in place, I felt like we just like leaned into it, and then it kept sounding that way.
And I don't want to give the impression that this album or this project is like an 80s record or like an homage to 80s music, because it's not, because like John said, it's like a blend of both your styles with influences, but it's still very modern. But one thing I feel like I need to say before we get too far into this is
I hate all of you. I want to leave.
You guys, I have something to tell you. No, but so Scott, your vocals and your vocal performance sounds the best it ever has. And
agreed.
I was blown away at what you accomplished in the sort of the range and the stylistic choices that you guys made, whether that was collaborative. You guys can talk about that. But going back and listening to Altitude, the Yellow Second record, which I famously love every single song on that record. And
agreed. I think it's fantastic too.
It's an outstanding record. And like going back and listening to it, and your vocal performance couldn't be any more different. And your growth as a singer, I guess, over this last decade or so has just grown. And so I want to know a little bit about that for this record, and how that kind of came about, if that was a part of a choice that you guys worked on together, or how that, if you just continued to push yourself over these last 10 years, but I just wanted to, at the very least, call that out and how amazing it sounds.
Well, thank you. Yeah, all of those things are true. As far as part of it, like every my voice sounds different on every Yellow Second record, even.
Sure.
And it's mostly because I'm not a confident singer, and I'm always trying. Like I quickly hate how I'm singing currently, and so then I try something else. So that changed it. Also, just years of making demos for Reese to sing, and that stretched the upper part of my range a lot. So I was able to sing in a higher range than I used to. But also, I got in the studio with Matt, and having him kind of coach me through the vocal performances on. We didn't get a chance to do that on all the songs, but we did it on
probably 90% of them.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of them, but like being in the studio and hearing some instant feedback that wasn't from my own ears, right? And just getting kind of coached along in that way, I think definitely opened up some doors and new sonic possibilities.
I think it's cool that you brought that up, because I feel like whenever, like, Scott and I have worked on stuff before, or I'll hear him sing on demos, I always feel like there's I guess because I work with a bunch of singers, I feel like I'm hearing what I want to hear. Scott's voice is a room, and I like to rearrange the furniture. But there was just like oh my gosh, well, if you can do this, of course you can do this. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like we can take it even further. And I do think he has this really timeless and ancient quality. Not even that. Like in the 80s, it was like this very like lower, coming from a little bit farther back in the throat kind of thing was a big deal. The Tears for Fears, Duran vocal delivery, nobody sings like that anymore. Mm-hmm. I feel like that when we started working on the songs and I started hearing like what Scott was doing, I was like, well, just for shits and gigs, like let's try something like that, because it feels more like authoritative. It feels more powerful. It feels more compelling. And so everything that Scott was doing was perfectly fine. Like we had this conversation ad nauseum where I'm like, no, we could put the record out as is. Like the vocals are great, but I wonder if you thought about like what you were singing, or you like thought about like moving your voice in a different way. Like what could we actually come up with? Because that's something I wish that people did for me when, because you always want somebody in the studio to kind of tell you like, oh yeah, you've hit it, or no, we can go further. Like the instant feedback thing is really helpful for anybody and everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was super impressed with what Scott was able to
Scott,
come up
you've
with.
solidified yourself as like a legitimate frontman. Like, I mean, however you want to like, like you said with Yellow Second, that you were always kind of changing how you were singing, and maybe you're not the most confident. I want you to come away from this project, or at least this conversation, like anytime you come on the podcast, we're always just going to sing your praises about everything that you do. But I just want you to come away from this knowing like that you just fucking crushed it on this project, and
single-handedly dismantled systemic racism with your vocal quality. I can't think of a better way to put it.
But I think what most people, the takeaway from this Fantasy League record was going to be to dismantle systemic racism
with the whitest voice possible.
No, I fully agree with all that. I had the same thing in my notes, that your vocal performance is such a centerpiece of this record. And that'll make sense what you said, Matt. I love that. I mean, we've heard from multiple people that your vocal coaching helped them achieve things that they hadn't before. I mean, Leonora said the same thing with Fast Feeling, that she didn't feel confident, and really working with you helped a lot for her. And I don't know, for whatever reason, Scott, I'm sure it's a bunch of things like you're saying. You sound super confident. Your voice sounds awesome on this record. And I don't know if it's, everything you're saying makes sense about the range and the coaching and the different work you've done. But yeah, that makes sense, Matt, that it's sort of pushed to the forefront at the center of the songs in a way that some of those classic 80s pop songs were. It sounds unique in that way, that there's such a strong vocal at the center of it. And yeah, it almost, I think I told you when I first heard some of the tracks that it sounded like Animal Collective to me, because it's like, I don't know if it's layered or doubled or what exactly is happening on a production level, but there's a sort of
probably ad nauseum. Yeah. so many doubles.
But I love it. I love that sound.
I would send him on some tracks, maybe 4 doubles, and you would be disappointed that it was only that many. Like, can I get at least 12?
Well, yeah. And there's this whole other thing. I mean, I have an endless supply of butter for Scott's bread right now, but so there were maybe like 3 or 4 songs that we did that on, like at Rock Candy, where it was like, oh, well, let's revisit this. Let's see if we can like make this song like feel a little bit more compelling in that way. So we did that, but then after that, when Scott came back to Colorado, he literally just internalized all of those things that we did in the studio together. And then it was just like body knowledge for him after that. And then I think you went back and did almost the entire back half of the record on your own, just kind of hearing yourself in those other songs and being like, oh yeah, let's like redeliver. You just like did all of that.
Yeah. I mean, it was super helpful to just kind of set up the boundaries. Like here's or the blueprint, here's the sound we're trying to achieve now that we have some parameters in place, that we can, that made it a lot easier to kind of, play inside of that space and reproduce it, on track after track.
Yeah.
Rather than just, having this like ill-defined void of, endless possibilities. That can sometimes be paralyzing, I think that was
too much space
helpful.
And too much furniture to rearrange if we're going to continue to use that.
We were outside, we needed a room.
needed a room. Scott's mouth was the room, I think, something like that. I don't know. I'm kind of loose. I'm kind of loose.
Losing the plot a little.
Yeah, losing the plot. Scott, tell us more about your mouth.
Well, to butter your bread a little, Matt, I feel like the synthy soundscape on this record are some of my favorite sounds that you've ever produced, and I love the room that you or how you arranged the room there. I'm going to drop the room thing after this, but
it's sort of like the ottoman is sort of the. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, end of ottoman talk. Yeah, So I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about this. And again, each of you has sort of mentioned a version of this on the pod before, but I'm curious to hear about the sort of general process of the song creation. Is it Scott sending an initial version to Matt adding beeps and boops, then back and forth after that? I mean, I know it's more complex than that, but can you just talk a little more in depth about how the process looked for the songs coming together on the record?
I feel like for most of the Fantasy League stuff, it was almost always that. It almost always started out with Scott sending a demo that was pretty well fleshed out. Like maybe there were a few of them where it's like, hey, there should be a bridge, or I don't really know how to end it. I don't know how to land the plane, sort of thing. And all demos are sort of like that. Mm-hmm. But whenever he would send me stuff, it was like, oh, I either know immediately what I want to do with this or what could make this more impactful. At least for me, I know that's all of that's subjective. But yeah, it was like, I'm going to stay away from the room metaphor. We've beat that horse to death. It's just a bloody pulp right now.
We love a bit here, so.
Yeah, but it was like all that kind of stuff. Or maybe he would have like a synth sound that I was like, oh, this synth sound is really cool. There's something here. I feel like I would almost always distort it or push it or make it a little bit nastier, a little bit more aggressive. I feel like the first thing that we start working on, like whenever you would come into the studio and we would have a song queued up, the very first thing that we would want to do is like start working on the drums and be like, if we can get the drums to feel like, then everything else kind of bows down to that, and it makes it a little easier to know what you're doing. You're not just kind of off in la la land, like, well, maybe we should start with this or that. It's like, no, let's get the drums and have the drums work really well with the melody, with, like how the song is being delivered. And if we can just if the melody sounds good over the drums, then everything else, we can kind of season to taste.
Yeah, and the drums would also inform a lot of the other parts. Sometimes, I mean, it varied a lot from song to song. Some of them changed wildly, after, I mean, like Cliffs of Moher is one of the most obvious examples.
Yeah.
That one, the whole vibe of that song, once kind of Matt had a chance to tear into it, changed a lot and for the better. And that was always a really fun, sometimes unfamiliar, but always like welcome experience for me, like seeing the change, the songs undergo more musical changes than I'm accustomed to. But like, but always great. You
never pushed back too hard on.
Well, I mean, if it's good, it's good. Like, I mean, it was always a fun experience, very rewarding, and especially when we had the chances to actually get in the same room and like have that instant
and start doing drugs. That helped so much.
have that instant feedback, and you can see when you're in the same room with somebody, like there's just a different energy. You can get through stuff a lot faster rather than just over email, sending demos back and forth via email, which is great. I love that you can do that now. Yeah. But yeah, you just come up with different stuff when you're
sending
space.
Demos back and forth. You're leaving a week, sometimes even 2, to get really neurotic about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because you listen to it and you're like, I don't really like that. Instead of just kind of riding this wave of, oh, it's working right now in the moment. Yes, and. Let's kind of keep moving forward. And there's a whole lot of like, maybe me doing something in the studio, pressing a few keys and like turning around, looking at Scott like, hey,
is he smiling?
What's he doing? How high is Scott now? But no, it was like, it's a lot of that. When you get that sort of instant feedback, like it makes the process so much more rewarding. Because I feel like you and I are both really about our own stuff. If we don't have that kind of feedback, we just end up in this, neuroses loop, and then nothing ever gets done, and you just overthink it to death, and then it dies on the vine.
Yeah. I was gonna ask about that. I mean, how much did the songs change from their origins in general, or did it really vary by song?
Yeah, it varied a lot.
Yeah, well, you played those demos of Cliffs of Moher, and even just like going back and revisiting some of those demos, I was like, why did I fuck with this? Scott had so many cool versions of that song, like that we could have chased down. I thought any of them were cool. It was just, I think, ended up being the vibe that we landed on that day.
I think the earlier songs probably changed more, and then again, once we kind of had the blueprint in place, it was easier to start like making other songs that fit the mold. Still, I mean, even all of them underwent, changes to varying degrees, and Matt's also really good about kind of clearing out the clutter. And at least for me, when I write, the more I work on something, the more like details I'm trying to weave in to keep myself interested, which can be great, but it can also introduce, some clutter that, when you're not sure, like you don't have that subjective, trusted, outside opinion, and that can give you that, perspective about, what's actually adding to it and what's just introducing like needless complexity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Somebody else who's like feeling in the room. Like, I always think you guys would be really great at that. You'd be really good to be the guys in the room. It could be tiebreakers for stuff. Like, this is emotionally moving me right now, or it's not,
Sure.
It's like going to the optometrist, A or B or C.
Well, when you get that, LP2 studio sessions going, and just fly us out, and we'll be your emotional room barometers for sure.
Well, when Scott and I work together, we only do one album and then call it quits.
Well, I object.
Fantasy League, second album, Mouth Furniture. It'll be great.
I love that.
Well, there's a bunch of other stuff I want to talk about. We can probably do that as we go through the songs. But one thing I did want to ask about before we got in to track by track is the artwork. The artwork of the album cover and the singles throughout have been really cool. Can you talk about how they happened?
Sure. The first couple of them we found on ArtGrab, which was, I don't know, I think you had used it for other projects before, right,
for
Matt?
sure. Absolutely.
So that was a find that Matt had. And we just found an artist that we were drawn to. And, I don't know if you're familiar with that site, but basically you just can make an offer on an original piece of art and negotiate with the artist. And so the first, maybe 3 or so singles, we did that. And then
I'll share the screen so we can look at these. What was your first single? Was it Blind?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sort of like a woman in space crying rainbows, which
hell yeah,
is
great
pretty,
sentence.
It's pretty sick.
I feel like you're creating a North Star for LP2.
Yeah, there's a real Trapper Keeper energy to these single covers. Which I like a lot.
Yeah,
yes.
Lisa Frank adjacent.
Lisa yes, Frank, sort of
that's
like
my vibe.
Not enough unicorns or dolphins jumping.
Neon
but
dolphins.
Need some dolphins.
My thing. That's cool. Yeah, I assumed that it was sort of not you necessarily directing an artist to create something, but it is funny how like what you went with for the album cover, it's like these two figures looking at a sort of exploding planet in the distance, and it feels like, oh, there's Matt and Scott, a Fantasy League, looking at their project, which there's a lot of moon stuff in here, and there's a lot of planet stuff and like apocalyptic. It just feels like it really fits well. So I just really like the vibe that you culminated tying all this stuff together.
Yeah. So for the actual album cover and the This Light single cover, so another Matt find was the Midjourney AI. Are you familiar with that?
Okay.
I mean, there's a few of the art creation AIs out there, which are amazing and wonderful and kind of a bummer at the same time.
Yeah, complicated.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast talking about how we're interfacing with Midjourney, but
it is super fun to play
AI
with.
Art, interesting conversation. But yeah, anyway, so
I mean, if you're not familiar with how those work, you feed it a prompt of some kind, and it will generate something based on that prompt, and sometimes you can create variations of it. So for the This Light one, I literally typed in as the prompt the first stanza of the song lyrics, and that's one of the things that it came up with, and both of us were just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I was like, that one is too perfectly aligned with the lyrics to not have had some sort of guidance. So
what did you type in for the main album artwork?
That's probably something super fucked up.
It's so dumb. I think it was like I actually had the word keytar in there, which it wisely omitted.
It was like, are you sure?
Yeah. Like, I'm just going to pretend you didn't say that part. I think I said like two people with keytars destroy the planet or something like that.
Cool.
It was
another good phrase.
It's so hardcore.
It's sort of
unnecessarily metal.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like the two people are standing in some sort of post-apocalyptic wasteland on fire, watching another planet be destroyed. So,
right. Yep.
Yeah, it is. It does give a sense of doom to it, but it also, like John said, kind of fits the whole vibe of all the planets and stars and sort of otherworldly stuff that's been going on through all your other artwork. I got to say, the Cliffs of Moher artwork it's up there with one of my favorites. I think it's so rad. I love all the colors and the wavy lines and everything that you guys had been doing with your singles. So it's pretty sick. But
yeah, I feel like that was we can move on from the album art stuff or whatever, but I do feel like in the past we've always wanted to work with an artist. And even for Eleventy and maybe Five Iron kind of has like the guy that you guys kind of go to or went used to. And so there are different ways of kind of interfacing with that. But for Eleventy, it's always been like, oh my gosh, who's going to do this? And then it's a cattle call. You know, like maybe we'll find somebody we work really well with. Then we have to get together a budget. And then it's like, 2 or 3 months maybe of back and forth. Well, does this work? Does this not work? Is this something that we can create art assets out of? Is the direction that the album art is taking something that we can do derivative pieces off of for merchandising or for online? So it just turns into art becomes unfun really quickly because you have to do so much in terms of like making sure that the branding is on point. And I think just being able to go purchase stuff or put in prompts, at least for this project, not to say that we'll always do that or that we're all about taking jobs away from actual artists at all. I think it helped us to get the album out. It didn't become this insurmountable thing where it's like, well, but we got to have album art, and you don't want this MS Paint looking bullshit to throw out there. You kind of want something that's reflective of the time and effort that you've put into it. And
well, it rules, and I would take T-shirts or whatever with these images on them. So just bear that in mind. Yeah, I mean, unless there's anything else, Andrew, should we give this thing the Magpod treatment and dive in here?
I think we should. We
will ask maybe along the way if you guys want to maybe mention like some of your personal favorites or like which ones came out in a surprising way, your favorite way. But we'll kind of go through and talk about each one of these.
All right, so let's start with opening track, Imaginary Lines.
Good. It's so good, guys.
Yeah. Classic Scott.
The opening, like that opening little part, you're going to hear us try and do approximations of lots of synth sounds.
Lots of mouth sounds. Just oscillate it. Sorry, baby.
I feel like there was a very clear Joy Electric Easter egg in there. The telephone wire thing with the little
nice.
That was some famous Matt Langston ear candy there.
Love it.
Yeah.
I would say this. So we're doing a top 3 as we usually do. This would be just outside my top 3.
Interesting. So this is my number 2.
Okay. The song absolutely rules. Could have easily been in there.
As I told you, John, before we even started, before Matt and Scott even joined, I said that this is my top 3 today because this is one of those records that, as the youths would say, it's a vibe. It's there's certain songs that evoke certain vibes and certain feelings, and it'll change from day to day. But for me right now, these are my top 3 for now. But yeah, this song, you can't deny when the album opens like that with a sort of like slow build. You're just like, okay, fuck me up with this. I'm ready. My body is ready.
Take me, daddy.
Let's get on this roller coaster and see where it takes us.
Yeah,
it's such an exciting. Go ahead.
I was going to say, this is a good opportunity to give you a shout out there, John, because like I'd asked for if you guys were interested to send playlist ideas or album sequence ideas, and this was not one I had considered for an opening track. I had a couple of different ideas, and I know Matt was kicking around some ideas as well. Yeah. But hearing this as the opener, and really your entire sequence is what we chose.
I'll echo that 100 times over. You are absolutely to blame for the sequence of tracks on the album, because as soon as you sent yours over, I was like, this makes it was almost like, why was I even trying? It was just like, let John decide.
And asking us for like sequencing is like catnip. So, we have strong opinions on it. Please send us sequencing thoughts whenever you want.
I know. Well, I was so behind on getting the sequence. I think I'd said for opening track, I said either Cliffs of Moher or Imaginary Lines, which Imaginary Lines in the Cliffs of Moher is about as
here's the thing. I have a philosophy when it comes to sequencing and playlists, which is like, you can't blow your load immediately. You have to begin the journey, and then the second track is when you fully release. And so Cliffs of Moher, spoiler alert, is like my highlight of the record. And I feel like there might be an impulse there to open with it, but I'm like, no, you gotta work up to that banger.
That's how I approach all of my conjugal relations and songs.
That's right. It applies track in so many ways. Classic track 2.
Yeah,
no, but I think
3 minutes in and you're blowing your load.
You're done. It's realistic. No, I think it's exactly.
Was this album good for you, baby?
But the reason that I thought it would work as an opener is exactly what you're saying, is that it's like it begins slow and quiet and builds, and it's like, ooh, we're going on a journey here. And the first time I heard it, I was just like, oh, this is such an exciting opening to the song and would make such an exciting opening to the album. It just feels propulsive immediately. What are you thinking about, blowing loads again or what?
Sort of. I'm like wondering if it changes your perspective, if you're like, you're being intimate with someone and then all of a sudden everything's over and you're like, yeah, but this was written by Taylor Swift. If they think differently about it. Like,
right. Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, it was good for me. And that's great.
Great. Actually, yeah, now that I look back.
Now that I think about it.
No, but it's such a banger that the combo of the bass line that comes in and that central synth hook is just, it's so satisfying.
You can't obviously the whoa whoa whoas,
we love a whoa whoa. Yep
Get a little. So good. Were any of the instruments on this record analog, or were they all like digital computerized synthy?
Well, there are analog synths and soft synths. So, but this song has some acoustic guitar in it.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I'm like, was that an actual acoustic guitar, or was that a?
Yeah, it was an actual acoustic guitar. Okay. I don't think we've
no. I don't know any VSTs of acoustic guitars that are like that good. Yeah. But yeah, I think the bum 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 bum. I'm pretty sure that's like a classic Juno 106, like actually hardware Juno 106.
Sounds so good.
Yeah.
Big fan. And then I think in the little bridge part, one of the most interesting things that I thought about the songs, that it's actually either I think it's in the pre-chorus, it's actually like basketball samples. It's like a basketball track of like different basketball bounces.
Oh, interesting.
I don't remember
Do you
that.
remember we did that? We like chopped up a loop of basketball samples and like put it in there.
That's cool.
Can we?
Weren't you thinking of the Metallica kick drum?
Classic dribble sound.
You're thinking of Saint Anger.
Yeah, maybe.
That's what we were really channeling on this.
There's so much Saint Anger
There's so
energy.
much anger.
Yeah, I mean, what was the process like for this one? Where did this one kind of come in the overall songwriting process?
It's kind of middle.
Yeah, I don't remember the demo.
Yeah, it's this was probably maybe the 6th one we worked on or something.
Okay.
But I think by that time we'd more or less established the general vibe of the record, and this one felt pretty like it came along pretty easily.
Really, we had to turn to the 80s to make this one work, if I remember correctly. There was like some compositional stuff where we would get about halfway through the song and then be like, how do we maintain a flow of energy? And then I think there's like one part where the actual chorus of the song ends up being a bridge / down chorus, or serves as that in there, which is like a strange compositional thing before the song kind of plays out. But that's what ended up working for us, and that's a total 80s thing.
Sure. Yeah.
I remember Lion King being, one of the things that you wanted to do to...
I always want to do Lion King shit.
Pre-chord, that bum, 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 bum.
That's amazing. Yeah. I'm picturing like Scott holding Matt off a cliff in triumphant glory. That rules.
Great.
Yeah. I love that. It feels like this was one of the, I'd heard the single at first, or the songs that you shared with us were the ones that ended up being the singles first, I think. And so this was like a surprise after I'd heard several of the singles already and just loved the song and thought it, could be in contention as one of those for sure. So this was a very pleasant surprise. I love the song. Lyrically, that great central refrain of I'm a little bit mystified about the things we worry over. I think that's just like a great chorus, very like earwormy. Find myself singing that, and an interesting concept. And I wanted to say, we were talking about lyrics and, Reese, but I wondered if the drawing imaginary lines between us that we can't cross over. I mean, it's a little Blue Comb making lines in the seat that we can't cross. I don't know. I wondered if there was any.
Oh my God. What a thread to pull on.
Probably nothing there, but.
No, that wasn't what I was thinking about. But
This isn't one of the two.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah, well, we were mentioning off pod that there were, not to take any of your lyric writing prowess away, Scott, but you did mention that there were a couple that Reese had given you some ideas for some lyrics on.
Yeah, and we can, I don't know if you want to dive more into that when we get to those songs.
Yeah,
but
this wasn't one of them. No, I knew you weren't channeling Blue Comb. I just thought that was a funny idea. But yeah, I don't know. The idea of like being sort of, I feel like there's a general theme to the record of sort of like looking at these big things, but finding value in like small connections in the midst of these like big things. So the idea of when you step back being mystified at the things we worry about when it's so much greater than that. I don't know. I'm not trying to get you to say what you meant, but that's sort of what it feels like to me.
Yeah, no, I think there is a common theme through a lot of the songs, this being one of them, of just maybe making too much of our differences. Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, it is confusing to me, and I feel like those differences have been accentuated by all the social media vitriol, and I'm not merely speaking of political differences and
right.
that sort of thing, but
You're making very pointed social commentary.
Yeah.
I get mystified over the things that Scott worries over too. So I feel like I can relate. Like if we go to a restaurant, I'm always like, is the sauce going to be something Scott talks about later?
I'm a little bit mystified.
If it's a really good sauce, I'm going to talk about it.
If it's a great sauce, we're going back.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
Scott, what are your top 3 sauces?
There was a Peruvian place here that had an amazing sauce, but they went out of business. So
Should have bought more sauce, bro.
Well, he tried. He actually, not to derail the conversation, but you actually sought out the guy who made the sauce and tried to buy like a whole tub of it.
I did buy a
You
lot
did
of it.
buy it,
For a while, he would text me anytime he was making a fresh batch, and he would even deliver it.
What kind of sauce was this? What was this mythical sauce?
It was like a Peruvian ají sauce, I think is what they called it.
Yeah.
Super good.
Man,
I wish I was making a joke, but this is all very.
We're gonna need.
I'm still mystified.
A Scott's sauce corner special ep, I think.
Scott's sauce corner.
Saucier Scott. All right. Well, my favorite sauce is the next song. Should we get to Cliffs of More?
Absolutely. Cliffs of More.
Oh my God.
Yep.
So good.
I just fully released. Hell yes. My number one.
My number one as well.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what do you guys think? Where does it fall for you?
It's definitely one of the most 80s vibes that I can think of. I do remember getting this demo, and then it immediately, just the way that the song was structured, the way Scott was delivering it, reminded me of this very specific album by ELO called Balance of Power.
Ooh, yeah.
And I do kind of feel like this song ended up being an amalgamation of maybe some of the cool parts of that ELO record, because it is just bubbly bass, super tight drums, warbly synth stuff in the background. That was definitely like a blueprint for how to engage with this one.
That's interesting. I feel like Reese has mentioned on our pod that record too, and like you got the two of you, Matt, connecting about ELO when you guys were first doing collaboration stuff together. I can see that. What I told Scott was that it reminded me of the Duran Duran song "Ordinary World," and he was like, maybe. But I was like, it's such a like in an ordinary world. I don't know. It really, it feels like sort of classic. I don't know, Duran Duran, ELO, sort of. It feels like a classic 80s song we're just discovering now. I love it. I don't know. Scott, I cut you off about your overall feelings on this one.
Oh, no, not at all. It's definitely one of my favorites, probably because the lyrics are, about my kids. And I had a harder time finishing this song than I usually do because I started with the lyrics, which I almost never do. And because the words, I think I also got in my head about it a little bit because the lyrics were so meaningful and it was important to me to finish it. This, I think, was also one that when I first sent it to you, I got like some radio silence on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Which I always...
I don't remember poor things about my behavior.
I always take as like, oh, okay, Matt didn't like this one, which...
is not true at all.
Okay. If you say so. I've never actually heard you say, I don't like that. So I always assume that must be...
Well, that's not a productive thing to say to anyone.
Okay.
This is a good insight into the creative process here.
No. I mean, as we've talked about before, I mean, like working with Matt is by far the easiest collaborative, process that I've ever been part of, and like for the most part, it yields nothing but like great songs, but also the
good times.
The good times. Yeah, the process along the way is so fun and mostly effortless, but. Yeah, okay. But I also am, I feel like comfortable sending him half-baked ideas and just to get a sense of like if something's worth pursuing or not. And this one was one that like I felt strongly enough about the lyrics that I wanted to keep trying, and so I had several iterations of this one before we kind of figured it out. This one I actually did start writing when we were in Ireland. It was the first time we'd taken the kids out of the country, and I was just struck by all these beautiful metaphors, and that's all I have.
As soon as I got my 23andMe back, I was like, I'm from here. I of course I love this song. Let's do something with it.
Yeah. No, I love the lyrics. I love the idea of sort of exploring the butterfly effect concept, a small thing blossoming into this bigger ramifications felt around the world. But like, I don't know, the idea of using this like vista of an overwhelming sight in nature, but focusing on the actions of your loved ones while you're there. Like these actions might seem small in comparison to the vastness, but the connection of the power of like both of those concepts of like, I'm seeing this incredible thing. My family members are doing these things that are memorable. Like, I don't know. I love the idea of connecting. Like there's a power in both your son throwing a stone, your daughter dancing, and the power of nature and of these huge things. So I don't know. I really love that line. I'm falling more and more in love with insignificance. I feel like it really sums it up well of like, well, what is significant and insignificant? Are the most sort of meaningful moments or things or memories, these smaller things, putting it in the context of like a large planet and all these things that are happening on a much bigger scale. I don't know. This is a certainly standout for me in terms of like thematic, focus and lyrics, and it feels very personal, like you're saying. So I resonated with it like right away.
I think that's put very beautifully, and my wife has echoed those sentiments almost verbatim. This is one of her favorite songs. Mm-hmm. She loves the lyrics and the imagery and the word painting. I don't know if I've shared that with you or not, or maybe she did. Maybe she told you.
No, thank
it's
you.
A good one.
I appreciate that.
That like, I mean, the drum beat from second one.
Yes.
That sort of warbly melody that comes in, but then the launch into the, just like the killer synth bass line and that perfect guitar line and sound. It feels very like effervescent. I don't know. That's another thing that sort of reminds me of like a Duran Duran guitar sound or something. It's just like, I don't know. I really love the sound. And then just the soaring chorus. It's so catchy. The harmonies are so great. Yeah. The whole thing feels so propulsive. Yeah. I don't know. I love this song.
Yeah. Matt, how did you feel with this project sort of like taking a step back from the mic and be sort of, because I'm assuming you did like harmonies or did some vocals on stuff, but like, where did you find yourself in terms of your contribution to these tracks with singing and melody and harmony?
I think there's only one song on the album that I actually ended up having background vocals on.
Oh, wow.
And I think it was You Will Run. Also, I feel like Scott and I have very different vocal qualities. So, so when I heard that back, I was like, this works, but it sounds like Scott started a band with a child. And, and I was like, I do have a very specific voice. I think I've just done it long enough to know, like, it's not worth me having an ego about. Like, it doesn't matter to me. I'm interested in like what is going to move me more emotionally. It's not important to me to like have my voice on the thing because it is our voice. Like we're, the keys, the buttons, the dials, the mix decisions. Yeah. It's all our voice. And I feel like maybe it was a creative decision on my part, maybe both of our parts, where it didn't feel like it was necessary. It felt like I didn't want to have a distracting quality to it. And Scott can clearly do all of his own harmonies.
I don't remember thinking or making a conscious decision about it. Really, you could say the same thing about any of the instrumentation. Like we just kind of, I don't even know if I could identify all the parts and who did what. Mm-hmm. It was just kind of like whatever needed to be done, somebody did it. And, including, Matt, you played more things on the album than I did at the end. I think that's how it worked out.
Yeah, but it's like such a ball of yarn. It might be like, I love Scott's, part, but then let's play it on something old and analog, or let's like change the preset, or see what we get. So.
Yeah, no, it feels, I can sense the Eleventy through line here. It sounds like the same person, but it's also a very much, distinct project on its own, and partly for, the vocals, as we're saying, like an obvious thing like that. But I can feel your fingerprints on it Matt for sure. But it's a different, it takes a different form here. Just, like I've said already, it's just a satisfying blend of things that I like about both of your backgrounds, but putting it together in this new and interesting way. And I feel like the song really highlights that. So
it definitely does. This one, maybe more than any of them, underwent a transformation from like the original idea to what you hear on the record.
And lots of talk, Scott, about the demos. John, do you hear that? Is it
the streets are talking?
I think the streets are saying like release the demos. Is that what they're saying?
I like that.
Yeah,
probably work something
demos.
Hell yeah!
Some people are talking about like a 2-disc vinyl release for the demos or the second record.
Yeah, I don't know what people are saying.
Like when the Cats movie came out and everyone was like, release the butthole cut. The Cats movie.
Exactly.
Well, there's a butthole cut of the Fantasy League album, and we will release it at some point.
Okay, good.
Some people might have said,
call it that.
Some people would have gone with the Snyder cut comparison. I love that you went with the Cats butthole cut.
Yeah.
The better cut.
Oh man.
Anyway,
here's another good song.
Blind. This was the first single, right? Did we already discuss that? All right. Yes.
My number 3.
Totally my number 1.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
This is an awesome song. I think so. Like any Matt Langston project, especially with something like this or basic glitches, these are headphones projects where you have to listen to them to really just envelop yourself in the soundscape and the nuances of all of the things happening. And I just love how the details that you put into all of these tracks and just letting it wash over you. It's such a great track.
Well, you know, we're a couple of BTBs. We're some big texture boys.
Big texture boys for sure.
So we love all the textures. I feel like both of you are good at bringing those textures.
Popcorn ceiling pals. Big texture boys.
Many textures to be found on this track. So was this clear to you that this was going to be the first single? I mean, was it your love for it, Matt, that made you want to do that?
I think this is just one of the ones that got fleshed out the soonest.
Sure.
Or the earliest, maybe that's the best way to put it. But yeah, it was super cool. It's kind of strange because I feel like this is one of those things where, you know, we started to kind of realize like, oh, let's get the drum track right, and then like sort of fill it out after that. And I think if I remember correctly, I came up with this guitar part for the chorus, but I approached it like what would Scott play in the chorus, because I would never come up with those like chord voicings on guitar, and so I kind of pushed myself out of my comfort zone, and and I feel like it definitely still kept it in like a Scott pop track, where there's an interesting chord voicing in the guitars.
I think there's a lot of that in the record in general. Is just like, what would impress Matt, or what would Matt like?
Are you serious?
Yeah, like I yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, just trying to write stuff that's going to get, keep both of us excited, and I don't know.
Yeah. This is Japanese girl pop samples.
Yeah, that is interesting, because I just sort of assumed that was a Scott guitar sound there. So yeah, it's interesting. We never know who's doing what with this collab.
Try to keep it on your toes.
It easily could transition into a ska guitar in the
There's a couple
chorus.
ska adjacent guitar sounds on this record.
Yeah.
But we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the bass line.
Yes.
The bass line in the verse
Matt also played
such
that.
a groove. All right,
Slaps.
cool.
Is that real?
Yeah,
that really
you
happen?
did the bass line on this one. I had a synth bass part on this.
Oh, and I was like, fuck that. Yeah. Piece of shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like a tangible real bass, and I love it. But the mixture of, we're grooving in the verses, but then that little bouncy bass sound that comes in the pre-chorus from sort of, auxiliary to am I using the right word? Analog to synthy there is such a good transition. And then it just explodes into this huge, satisfying chorus. Where again, the harmonies sound great. Yeah, I just love the bouncy bass and the little bouncy keys, and then the journey it sort of takes from the pre-chorus into I don't know, I just feel like the evolution of this song is really satisfying in all the kind of ways that it goes, including that bridge, which, Andrew, if we could hear a little of at 3:05, I think it does a really interesting thing, and maybe it's some of, Matt, what you were talking about before, but it's like the melody and that sort of sliding synth sound. It's just like it takes an interesting turn with the bridge. So good. I love that.
Oh, yeah. It's one of my faves. Just nasty,
So
dirty, like trying to crawl out of the ooze sort of sounds. They're my favorite. I think we might have done that together when you were in the studio, if I remember correctly, like, because we were pushing it. I think we like pushed the synthesizer through maybe like a distortion pedal, and then like through a console, and just like maxed everything out.
Yeah, well, actually, it had a different bridge originally, a far weirder bridge, actually.
Oh.
And then you redid the bridge on that one, and it is way better. It fits, much better than the first one did. So
interesting. Release the butthole bridge, though, because I want to hear
Release the
the original
butthole
plan
bridge.
was. But yeah, I absolutely love that sound and where the song goes for that part. I feel like there's another one I'll mention later where it's sort of like, actually, it's the next song that kind of goes into like a more minor key thing for the bridge. And I love that sort of transition. Yeah, I mean, in terms of lyrics, a love song, I feel like it's safe to say.
This is clearly about your faith, obviously.
I read it as a love song, but maybe it's more complex than that.
I read it as a love song as well. So
Yeah.
So
you want to address that at all?
Well, Reese wrote these lyrics.
Got it.
Oh, this was not one of my guesses of a
Oh,
Reese song.
right.
Yeah, so this was the first song we worked on, and I originally had a different, I never had real lyrics. I had placeholder lyrics with a different melody. And this one, I don't know, I probably started working on this song in like 2018 or so.
Oh, wow.
And it just sat there. And then when, I think maybe we talked about this a little bit last time I was on, but when I was trying to get some momentum with this project, but before really
when Scott was pestering me about it.
Before I pestered Matt for like the 10th time. Yeah, Reese and I had talked about kind of working out a trade, and he said, well, I've got some lyrics I haven't used, and if I could use some help with music on this other project, and this was some of his table scraps, I guess, that I latched onto and repurposed for this project.
Well, it's great. I mean, any song with "I want to shoot my heart into outer space," I feel like is automatically a win.
I don't feel like it's dramatic enough.
Yeah, it is Reese-y in that way. But yeah, I also noticed like the first verse ends with singing out your hope like tears in the rain, which for me conjures the Blade Runner monologue about tears and rain, which that little sort of, I don't know what you would call the synth sound, but that obviously sort of like analog synth sound we heard in the bridge like also feels very Blade Runner-y to me. I don't know. So it all feels of a sort of Blade Runner piece to me on this one that I'm digging.
Yeah. For sure. Vangelis vibes.
Yes. Oh God, give me those Vangelis vibes. But yeah, I mean, is there anything else about like how did you said this was like one of the first ones to come together. So how did the like process of putting this one out first affect anything else, or was the rest pretty set by the time you were sharing this with folks?
I mean, if I remember correctly, the vibe was kind of like we got to start the process. Like if we don't, because I do feel like Scott and I are the kind of people that we can hem and haw to a point where it's not healthy, especially when we're working on stuff that like, well, there's a million different ways that we can take it. This one was sort of like, let's put it out, let's see what happens. No pressure. I feel like we kind of kept telling each other like it was no pressure, low pressure, and let's just see what it feels like to have this out there, because we're still working on the rest of the record, and we're like, does the rest of the record sound like this, or is this the blueprint, or what do we do? And I think we just kind of ended up on no wrong answers, and then somehow the whole thing takes shape, and all the songs feel like they belong on the same, at least I feel like they do. But this one does have a very specific kind of vibe.
Yeah, I think I have a tendency to be kind of eclectic in it, just to keep myself interested, and so it's sometimes hard to know like where to like draw that boundary, like keep it interesting but like still feel like a cohesive.
Get into those old haunts.
Yeah, let's stroll.
Oh yeah.
So good.
So great.
This is my number 2.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
This is my other guess for Reese-based lyrics. Am I wrong?
You are wrong.
Wow. This feels very personal, so I assumed it was your own experience.
Well, I mean, Blind also felt very personal.
Well, it's about shooting your heart in outer space. This is like, we shared an apartment on 11th Avenue. So.
Yes, correct. But you know
when
why?
you put it that way, it feels so stark.
The reason I feel like this would work on the last 5 Iron record, because it feels like it's blending these ideas of what's the song I'm thinking of?
Call Me Maybe.
No. Anyway, like there's this
the one about Denver changing and stuff.
That song about like
Lonesome for Our Heroes.
Yeah. That song, and then also like there's talking about voice and singing, which is also a very big through line for that last 5 Iron record. So in my mind, I'm like, oh man, this song could have like been another track on that record. It felt very much, even the melody felt like it could be turned into a 5 Iron song. But but I mean, it makes sense. I mean, because if you're writing a lot of those melodies too, it just, I don't know. It felt of a piece. But
maybe Five Iron will cover it.
Well, so funny that you guys mentioned that. So this song actually was the precursor to Homelessly Devoted. And if you go back and if you compare those side by side, you will hear some similarities with the chord progression and also the the melody of the chorus of this one is similar to the verse melody of Homelessly.
Maybe this is what I was picking up on, that for some reason I'm like, this feels like it would work. But anyway, so obviously I've been very wrong about all my guesses.
No.
Fuck me. All right.
I had the same thought about connecting the dots of recent Five Iron songs and this in terms of being like a Denver resident reflecting on change and the sort of, mentioning sort of gentrification and how things have changed over the years. So that's certainly linked in my brain, but it feels like Cliffs of Moher to me in that it's like, it's not cryptic. It's very personal in a way that I don't have to search for what you're talking about, but it's still profound because I feel like so many couples can relate to that idea of taking tours of physical places they experienced significant things together and reflecting on how they changed. That's where this used to be. And using that as a metaphor for sort of relationship and how the couple has changed, I think is a really cool idea.
I love that.
Yeah, I do think Reese has, I don't know if you can be in a band with someone for as long as we have and not be influenced by them.
Sure.
He's way better at lyrics than I am, but, I do think that there is...
That's a limiting belief, Scott. Got that shit out?
I know. I do think that, that he has influenced me both topically and stylistically at times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a great topic, and it's such a catchy refrain of it's just you and me in a reverie walking around all our old haunts. That's such a earworm that I sing to myself regularly. And I love the sort of idea behind it. But musically, just that fuzzy, slidey synth line that is so satisfying. And we heard
that may be one of the few moments where we kind of disagree.
It wasn't even a moment. It was just I'm not willing to fight Scott again. Just whatever you want. Let's just do it. No, I just loved. Okay, maybe this was one of the songs that we had the most back and forth about, because I absolutely when I heard the song, I was like, this is fucking Sugar Ray. We got to do the song like a Sugar Ray song, and that's where the beat came from and how kind of campy and hop along it feels, because I loved that. But I just love the groove and just the kind of I'm happy to sit there. And then Scott was like, it's not doing it for me. I need some kind of synth line. And then I think he wrote a synth line, and I think I hit him back. Is that one that you really love at the very beginning? And I was like, it feels kind of busy to me.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to mute it, or maybe I sent back a mix where it wasn't in there, and Scott's like, "Did you mean to mute that?" And I was like, "Maybe, yeah." And then he was like, "I think we just found some middle ground on it." I'm so glad that we decided to keep it in there, because now it feels weird to hear the song without it, or to think of the song without it.
Well, we were lucky enough to hear both of those versions because Scott was asking for our input, and I was like, I could see it either way, but I would say that I would miss that.
Oh, so you put together a team to come against me. That's what was happening.
Yeah. But you gotta put it to a vote.
But what we ended up with is the perfect sort of compromise, and it wasn't even something that occurred to me. We were like, do you like the version with it or without? To be like, well, let's start the song off without it and then build to having it. And it's like, oh, I love that sort of. So I think it combines both of your sort of maybe immediate impulses there, that I think it works without it, but once it comes in, it's like, oh, that's special. So it wouldn't be. It already feels special from the immediate, burn, that warm sort of.
It sounds like an old turntable starting up.
That's it.
That's such a good.
Yeah.
It's this warm sort of sound that immediately kicks it off, and then. Yeah, I just love the melody.
It's Sugar Ray. Now
that you're saying that, I'm like, it feels like there should be some Rick, or whatever.
Scott is walking around. Scott's walking around his old haunts, looking at all the statues crumbling for him.
My first inclination for that sound was to actually do like the jazz master kind of like My Bloody Valentine, bringing it up to pitch. And it was Matt who decided to I forget what the plugin is, and
it's like Verify or something.
Verify, that's right. And just reverse the synth sound to kind of accomplish a similar effect, you know, like the pitch bendy thing, but it just is super cool sounding.
All right, I just want to listen to that 1 second again of the start of the song because it's so sick.
Yeah.
All around the world, statues crumble for me.
Somebody do the mashup, please.
Matt, you're gonna bleach those tips again, and
you're
gonna be wearing
Sugar Ray lyrics over that. Definitely making the butthole cut.
Yeah, hell yes. Oh man, you're gonna get that soul patch, you know, where nothing but like sleeveless. You're just gonna be dancing in a pool. It's gonna be great.
But yeah, I feel like this thing builds in such a satisfying way. It's got sort of the bouncy melody that you're talking about, Matt. But then, it moves into this super catchy chorus. I love the guitar line and the bass line in that chorus. And then, the second verse starts, and I love how there's a little like synth sound mirroring the vocal melody at first. So like, nee, 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 nee. I don't know. I think it's really cool.
Oh, yeah.
But what I was going to mention is the bridge. At around 240, this is where I feel like it goes into like sort of this minor key thing and this like swirly synth sound all of a sudden, and I really like the turn that it takes there. If we could hear that, oh, it's so good. So great.
That's totally one of my favorite parts of the song, and I'm pretty sure it was like there was a literalism to it where I was like, it's a song called Old Haunts, and we don't have any fucking ghosty shit in here. We need a little boo coming up, you know, a boo bridge.
I love a boo bridge. Yeah, that spooky sound, and then the sort of I feel like I'm a sucker for that anytime. And what we're doing sounds as good as the song.
Anytime, Matt, anytime you want to sample me or John for any of the tracks, we can do.
It goes like ring.
We're gonna assemble a song comprised of nothing but their mouth sounds.
It's just MacPod samples, MacPod sample pack.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Then that's just becoming pentatonics, and John and I are just doing no thanks.
Don't want to hear that. What I do want to hear, speaking of ghosty shit, is this next song.
Ooh, This Light.
Outside my window, in hemispheres of black and white, there's a half moon hanging in a cloudless sky, split by the sunlight. I've heard as a serpent sing, and a sea of tranquility. But from where I sit, these pictures are a fiction. Born of the radiation, fatally flawed mutation. Saturnine in the half-light, full of heart, but not half right. This light has nothing new to show. This light won't tell you where to go. This light what you already know. This light makes the shadow grow.
All right, this is my number 3 because this song is a fucking banger.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, this is a BTB song for sure. This is a big Texture Boy song. There's so many little things going on. It's such, my ears are so horny for this song.
I was wondering what the word was going to be, and of course it was.
You've got ear boners. That's great.
I got major ear boners. They keep pushing the earbuds out.
Oh shit! That's going on the butthole cut.
No, God, there is a sort of like a minimalist sort of thing vibe going on here, and it's so dark. There's a darkness to it. It's dirty, it's filthy, and I love how Scott's voice has this sort of dark and grittiness thing going on in it. And then like when the chorus comes in, it's just like this explosion, but then it pulls back. It is, oh man, loving everything that goes on. The first time I heard this song, I was like, oh shit, this rules.
So I was talking earlier about how much Cliffs of Moher changed. I actually had forgotten. This would take the cake by far, because the music to this one was basically completely rewritten by Matt. We had an initial version of it that, I don't know, I was excited about it at first, but we just couldn't find our...
Was this the one that sounded like a cruise ship band? Like it was like... Was this the one that was kind of a Little Mermaid-ish? And then we changed it?
I don't remember any of the songs fitting that description, but yeah, I don't know. We just never hit our stride with this one. Like the treatment that we had been kind of subjecting all the songs to was not really working as well with this one. And it wasn't bad. It was just kind of...
It was. It was
bad.
This light.
That's exactly it. Okay.
I'm pretty sure I have the demo.
I gotta hear this one.
I'm pretty sure I sent you
and a Jamaican crab, or
I sent you like the original version of this song, or the one that we were going to put out, but that we were not like super pumped about it.
Well, it was completely different. Like the melody was the same, but I mean the underlying chords, it had a happy. I mean, I guess the verse still had kind of a minor feel, but it went to a total like pop major key chorus. Yeah, we were sitting there like, let's just burn it all down. And
yes, I remember us muting everything. This was like, I think it was like the last day that you were there at the studio, and we were like, you know what, let's just try something out. And then we kind of had this, come to Jesus, no holds barred, everything gets muted thing, and then just started pulling in like one shot samples and different drum stuff. And I was like, let's just listen to the vocal and treat it like we were doing a remix for it. We can do away with the original chord progression. Let's just do something over top of the melody and see what happens. And for whatever reason that day, the splice gods smiled upon us, and like everything we pulled in was like, fuck yeah. It's pretty great. Yeah, because it does kind of have this like Billie Eilish kind of vibe to it.
I was going to say 1,000%. This gives me bad guy Billie Eilish. I got the snaps going on, and that's what I'm saying. Like it has that very minimalist kind of focus that makes me think of that kind of
spooky,
moody, thing. So I'm super into it.
The crazy thing is Scott did a complete 180 to the same quality of effect with this vocal too, because the original vocals that we had set stuff to, it was like outside my window. It was like very like super pushed and forced, because that fit the song treatment that we had to begin with.
Was Tom DeLonge in the studio?
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, where are you?
My window.
That whole thing was just a setup for you to do your impression.
Yeah,
thank you.
That's
I appreciate the softball.
Game, set, match.
Sorry, go ahead, man.
No, but like I remember you took this back, and I was like, maybe let's try something like super understated, super aspirate, almost like you're just whispering, like just barely have a note in there. And then by the time you double that 3 or 4 times, there is this kind of like, come along, mama, let me whisper in your ear kind of quality to it. And which is what we all wanted from Scott in the first place. And I'm really glad that we nailed it on this one.
It does really stand out for that reason. It feels like much more chill and minor and pulled back in a way that I like, coming in. I feel like I'm tooting my own sequencing horn, but I like that it comes in the middle of the record after you've experienced these like synthy soaring chorus highs to kind of pull back on this one, and you're immediately like, whoa, like this is different territory, and Scott's voice is low and quiet. And I really like the sort of break that this allows. And that I mean, that is a perfect little riff. I love that hook. So I wondered, Scott, if this was one that took a different, like, it doesn't surprise me to hear that it started out in a place that wasn't necessarily like dark and minor like this. But I don't know. I really like where it moved into.
Yeah, so do I. We
this
had
like Calypso version, that'll be the remix that we all want.
No, we definitely had some conversations trying to decide if it was too different from the other songs on the record, or if it was going to be like a welcome palate cleanser. And I'm glad we decided to keep it, because it's one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, well, that's what like from what we were saying, from what John was saying about the sort of 80s retro feel to modern. This is why I think it does fit. It's not too far. It's not too far removed. It's not like you did decide to like, well, let's throw in a Tom DeLonge pop punk banger or something right in the middle.
Right.
This works, and it doesn't take me out of the vibe of the record.
Yeah, I think it's all of a piece, and even when I love the vibe of a project or an album, you don't want 10 songs that sound like the same thing. So I love the moments that are deviations from that, but still like cohesive with the rest.
Can I send an old demo version over to you guys?
Sure. Yes, please.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we're kind of at that point now. We're talking about butthole cuts and all kinds of shit.
Please send it. Send the Sebastian version.
What I want is you to go do another AI and do two dudes with guitars destroying the world with their buttholes. And see what the butthole cover would look like.
I don't even know what this sounds like because I haven't played it before. It just says "This Light Ideas."
I love it.
It's gonna be no one's gonna be our friend after this. It's nail in the coffin.
You're emailing it right now?
You should have it.
All right, let me open up my email because oh shit,
here it is. Thing.
We can always take it out of the. I have no idea what phase of production this is in. I don't think it's the one that we ended up with.
What if we hear it and we're like, guys, this is the better version? I don't know what you're thinking.
I mean, you can say
there
that.
is a 0% chance of that
happening. All right.
How can you not remember that?
Here we go.
This is a demo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Outside my window, in hemispheres of black and white, there's a half moon hanging in a cloudless sky, split by the sunlight.
Fascinating.
I've heard of the serpent sea and a sea of tranquility, but from where I sit, these features are a fiction.
This is so wildly different.
Yeah. There's a whole other version where it's like very similar to this, but the chorus is Little Mermaid.
I mean, I could kind of hear it in that intro.
Yeah.
It wasn't too far from the dee-dee-dee-dee. I don't know. There could have been a really interesting version of that, but I do like where you guys went.
1,000,000,000%.
Yeah, it's interesting to. I mean, yeah, there couldn't be a more sort of stark.
I said it was interesting.
I said it was interesting.
Thank you so much for that.
Oh man, I'll never be able to say
shit in this song.
That's what Matt's always saying. Clear it out.
I'm so hot. It's so hot.
So then, what's the song?
It actually is, Craig. You don't know.
Matt hears this song and he's like, the demo. He's like, I don't even want to be around it anymore.
Oh boy, we could riff on that for ages. But I'll never be able to say interesting on this podcast again. I was going to say lyrically a fairly cryptic one, allusions to sort of darkness and light and planetary changes, and I don't know. Again, I don't need you to explain everything to me, but can you talk a little bit about like the impetus behind the theme of this one?
Yeah, it's not. I guess. Unlike Imaginary Lines, still kind of that. It's about judgment and.
Apocalyptic judgment or interpersonal?
Interpersonal. But yeah, I guess using cosmic imagery to tell that story. Usually in a song or poetry, like light is a positive force, right? And kind of the idea of flipping that around and using it as more of like an interrogation lamp, kind of
kill your gods,
or a force that burn everyone alive.
I love it. I thought the lyrics were incredibly cerebral, and they definitely tickle all of my apocalyptic synapses.
Yeah, I almost thought of it as like I got all of the stuff that you were saying just now when I heard it, but I was thinking of it more as a sort of like faithy or belief thing, to be like using this idea that's supposed to be this like positive, but using it as a justification to like judge people with it or something. I don't know, but that doesn't mean that those other elements aren't still in there in a different way. But yeah, the idea of using light, this thing that you profess to be this light, is actually being used as like darkness. I don't know. Interesting. Anyway, that was a fascinating journey. Thank you for sharing the aerial cuts with us.